DreamFuel stories. Every journey needs a guide. Hey there, before you close your eyes tonight, I want to share a story with you. A story that can shift the way you think, give your heart peace, and fill you with hope for tomorrow. Tonight, let's take a few minutes to recharge together and remind ourselves that strength is always closer than we think. You know, every single day we face moments that test us. Maybe it was a difficult conversation at work, a challenge with family, or simply that voice in your head telling you that you're not enough. But here's what I've learned, and what tonight's story will show you. Sometimes the breakthrough we're desperately seeking is just one conversation, one mentor, one guiding hand away. Tonight's story is about Alex, a young entrepreneur who thought he had to carry the weight of the world alone. What he discovered changed everything, not just for his business, but for his entire approach to life. This story reminds us that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And sometimes the guide we need has been waiting for us all along. What part of your day today made you feel challenged? Write it in the comments. I want to know. I see many of you sharing challenges about work pressure, difficult relationships, and feeling overwhelmed trying to handle everything alone. Alex's story speaks directly to these struggles, because just like you, he thought he had to carry the weight of the world by himself. The weight of carrying it all. Alex stared at his laptop screen, the cursor blinking mockingly in the empty document. 3 months ago, he'd quit his corporate job to start his own digital marketing agency. 3 months of 16-hour days, sleepless nights, and a bank account that seemed to shrink faster than his confidence. His phone buzzed with another overdue payment reminder. The co-working space rent was due in 2 days, and he had exactly $47 in his business account. His parents' voices echoed in his mind. Why didn't you just stay at the stable job? Starting a business is too risky. Alex had always been the type to figure things out on his own. In school, he'd rather struggle through a math problem for hours than ask the teacher for help. In his corporate job, he'd work weekends to avoid admitting he was overwhelmed. Now, as an entrepreneur, that same stubborn independence was becoming his biggest obstacle. He scrolled through social media, seeing other business owners celebrating their successes, new clients, growing teams, fancy office spaces. Everyone else seemed to have it figured out. Everyone else seemed to know some secret that he didn't. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this, Alex whispered to himself, closing the laptop with a heavy sigh. An unexpected encounter. The next morning, Alex decided to work from a small cafe instead of the co-working space he could barely afford. As he nursed his second cup of coffee, trying to make it last as long as possible, he overheard a conversation at the table next to him. The biggest mistake I made in my first business was thinking I had to do everything myself, said an older man with silver hair and kind eyes. I wasted 2 years spinning my wheels when I could have asked someone who'd already walked that path. Alex couldn't help but glance over. The man was talking to a woman who looked to be in her 30s, taking notes eagerly as he spoke. But how do you find the right mentor? She asked. How do you know who to trust? The older man smiled. You look for someone who's been where you want to go, but more importantly, someone who remembers what it felt like to be where you are now. When the woman left, Alex found himself staring at his empty coffee cup, wrestling with a decision. The logical part of his brain told him to mind his own business. The desperate part whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was exactly what he needed to hear. Taking a deep breath, Alex approached the man's table. Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. I'm Alex, and I think I really need to hear what you just said. The meeting that changed everything. The man looked up with a warm smile and extended his hand. I'm Robert, and please, sit down. You look like someone carrying the weight of the world." Alex laughed, but it came out more like a sigh. "Is it that obvious?" "I recognize the look," Robert said gently. "I wore it for about 3 years when I started my first company. What's your story?" Something about Robert's demeanor, calm, non-judgmental, genuinely interested, made Alex open up in a way he hadn't with anyone in months. He told him about quitting his job, about the sleepless nights, about the constant fear of failure, about feeling like everyone else had access to some entrepreneur handbook that he'd never received. Robert listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding with understanding. When Alex finished, Robert was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" Robert finally said. 25 years ago, I was sitting in a cafe just like this one, having almost the exact same conversation with a man named Frank. I was 6 months into my first business, completely lost, convinced I was the only person who didn't know what he was doing. What happened? Frank became my mentor. Not officially, we never had contracts or formal meetings, but he'd meet me for coffee once a week, let me bounce ideas off him, helped me see my blind spots. More importantly, he helped me understand that every successful person had felt exactly the way I was feeling. Alex leaned forward. "And your business?" "Sold it 7 years later for 8 figures," Robert said matter-of-factly. "Started 2 more after that, but none of that would have happened without Frank's guidance. He didn't give me the answers. He helped me find them myself." The first lesson. "The thing is, Alex," Robert continued, "you're trying to climb a mountain, but you're refusing to use the trail that's already been carved out by the people who climbed it before you. Why make it harder than it needs to be?" Alex felt something shift inside him, a mixture of relief and embarrassment. Relief that maybe he wasn't uniquely incompetent, embarrassment that he'd been too proud to seek help. "I guess I always thought asking for help meant I was weak," Alex admitted. Robert chuckled. "You know what's weak? Wasting years of your life repeating mistakes that someone could have helped you avoid in 10 minutes. You know what's strong? Having the courage to say, 'I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn.'" They talked for another hour. Robert didn't give Alex a business plan or a magic formula for success. Instead, he asked questions that made Alex think differently about his problems. What would happen if you focused on serving one client exceptionally well instead of trying to land 10 mediocre ones? What if instead of competing on price, you competed on the results you deliver? What systems could you put in place so you're not constantly reinventing the wheel? By the time they parted ways, Alex's notebook was full of insights, and his chest felt lighter than it had in months. The transformation begins. Robert gave Alex his contact information with one condition. "Don't just collect advice, act on it. We'll meet next week, and I want to hear what you've implemented." Over the next 6 days, Alex experienced a kind of productivity and clarity he'd never felt before. Instead of trying to do everything at once, he focused on Robert's questions. He reached out to his most satisfied client and asked for a detailed testimonial and a referral. Within 48 hours, he had a meeting with a potential new client. He stopped competing on price and started crafting proposals that focused on the value and results he could deliver. His next proposal was 40% higher than his usual rate, and it got accepted. He created templates and systems for tasks he'd been doing manually, freeing up hours each week. When he met Robert the following week, Alex could barely contain his excitement. "It's like someone turned on the lights," Alex said. "I was stumbling around in the dark, and you helped me find the switch." The deeper lesson. But Robert had more to teach him than business strategies. Alex What you've learned this week isn't really about marketing or systems, Robert said. It's about something much more fundamental. You've learned that you don't have to carry everything alone. He paused, looking directly into Alex's eyes. This applies to more than just business. When you're struggling in a relationship, do you ask for advice from people who have successful marriages? When you're feeling overwhelmed mentally, do you seek guidance from a therapist or counselor? When you want to get in shape, do you learn from people who've already done it? Alex realized he'd been applying his figure-it-out-alone mentality to every area of his life, not just his business. The strongest people I know, Robert continued, are those who've built a network of guides and mentors in different areas of their lives. They understand that wisdom shared multiplies and struggles shared become lighter. 6 months later, Alex's business didn't become an overnight success, but it became something much more valuable, sustainable, and fulfilling. He'd landed 3 major clients, hired his first part-time employee, and moved into a real office space. More importantly, he'd learned to ask for help. He joined an entrepreneur group where business owners supported each other. He found a therapist to help him work through the anxiety and perfectionism that had been holding him back. He even reached out to his parents, not to admit defeat, but to build bridges and gain their support. The cafe where he'd met Robert became his regular Tuesday morning spot. Sometimes, Robert would join him, but often, Alex would meet with other entrepreneurs he was now mentoring himself. One morning, a young woman at the next table was on a phone call, her voice tight with stress as she talked about her struggling startup. When she hung up, Alex found himself walking over with a warm smile. "Excuse me," he said. "I couldn't help but overhear. I'm Alex, and I think you might benefit from a conversation." The circle continues. As Alex shared his story with the young entrepreneur, whose name was Sarah, he realized something profound. The guidance he'd received from Robert wasn't just changing his own life. It was creating ripples that would touch lives he might never even know about. Sarah's eyes lit up with the same mixture of relief and hope that Alex had felt 6 months earlier. By the end of their conversation, she had pages of notes, and more importantly, the understanding that she wasn't alone in her struggles. Every champion was once guided, Alex told her, remembering Robert's words, and every guide was once where you are now. The beautiful thing about getting help is that it prepares you to help others. Engagement questions. If you were Alex, what would you do to move forward? Which part of this story touched you the most? Comment below. And if Alex's journey from isolation to connection resonated with you, if his transformation from struggling alone to finding his guide gave you hope, please show your support with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps stories like this reach others who need to hear them. Take a moment and think about today. No matter how hard it felt, tomorrow is another chance. Even a tiny step can turn your whole day around. Believe in the power of small actions. Alex's story isn't just about business success. It's about the courage to admit we don't have all the answers. It's about understanding that the struggles you're facing right now have been faced by countless others who found their way through. And most importantly, it's about recognizing that the help you need might be closer than you think. Maybe you're like Alex was, trying to carry everything alone, convinced that asking for help is a sign of weakness. But here's what I want you to understand. Every person you admire, every success story you've heard, every achievement that inspires you, behind each one is a network of guides, mentors, and supporters who helped light the way. The most successful people aren't those who never needed help. They're the ones who were wise enough to seek it and humble enough to receive it. They understood that strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about building bridges to others who can help you carry the load. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, think about one area of your life where you've been struggling alone. Think about who might be able to offer guidance, support, or simply understanding. Tomorrow could be the day you make that connection. What is one small thing you can do tomorrow to feel stronger and more hopeful? Just like the challenges you shared at the beginning of this video, remember that tomorrow is your chance to take that first step. Whether it's reaching out to someone for advice, joining a community, or simply admitting you don't have to figure it all out alone. If this story gave you even a little spark of hope, share it with a friend, hit the like button, and come back tomorrow. We'll check in on today's story and see how it unfolded. You won't want to miss it. Subscribe to DreamFuel Stories so every night you can end your day inspired. You know, as I was putting together Alex's story, I kept thinking about all the messages I receive from viewers like you. Messages from people who feel stuck, overwhelmed, or alone in their struggles. What strikes me most is how many of you have the answers you need. You just need someone to help you see them clearly. Tomorrow night, we're going to explore what happened when Alex's mentoring relationship with Robert evolved into something even more powerful. We'll dive into the network effect, how one connection led to a web of relationships that transformed not just Alex's business, but his entire approach to life. You'll discover the 3 types of people you need in your corner and how to identify them in your own life. Plus, I have a special announcement about our DreamFuel community, a space where stories like Alex's don't just inspire, but where real connections are made and real lives are changed. Until tomorrow, remember, you don't have to figure it all out alone. The guide you need might be one conversation away. Sleep well, dream big, and keep fueling those dreams. Do you have your own story of courage or hope? Share it in the comments. We might feature it in our next video.